For my thoughts on all the latest happenings in the NFL in a completely relaxed, unscripted format, be sure to check out my channel, JG9 News. And now, on with our feature presentation. No, this is not clickbait, this is not an exaggeration, this is not hyperbole. Michael Strahan might not hold the official sack record in NFL history. It might actually belong solely to Pittsburgh Steelers guy TJ Watt. And no, I'm not talking about that sack in Week 17 in that game between the New York Giants and the Green Bay Packers, where you could argue that Brett Favre went down and gave himself up and gifted Strahan a sack. That's been beaten to death. We're not talking about that play. I'm talking about a completely different play that never should have been ruled a sack in the first place. Before I talk about said play, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. We're trying to get to 60K. I would greatly appreciate it, and thanks for the support. But I want to discuss how we got to this point and how the heck I came across this in the first place, because it's not like I was on a mission to try and disprove Strahan's sack record and say that it might not be legitimate. I was working on a video that dropped today about a 2007 game between the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints. And you can learn more about that video if you want to watch it by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Specifically, I wanted to talk about something that this man right here, Carolina Panthers head coach John Fox, said to his star defensive end, Julius Peppers, before the game. Peppers was really struggling to start off the 2007 season, recording no sacks through his first 4 games. As a way to motivate Peppers, Fox told him that in 2001, Michael Strahan set the all-time single-season sack record, recording 22.5 sacks. However, through the first 5 games of the season, he had no sacks. So Peppers shouldn't get discouraged because he's going to get his. Because look at what happened to Strahan in 2001. Of course, that was not even entirely true or remotely true. And Fox, who was the defensive coordinator of the Giants at the time that Strahan broke the official sack record, completely lied, seeing as Strahan had 8.5 sacks, not 0 sacks, through the first 5 games of the year, and was well on pace to break the record. And again, if you want to watch it, the link is also in the description. But I found this story highly interesting, and thought that it would be great for something to talk about on my channel, because if you've ever watched my channel before, you know that the bulk of my content is about weird and wacky things in NFL history that you probably forgot, or that you probably never heard of. And another thing to note with my channel, I edit all of my own videos on the NFL side of things. I don't have an editor, and while that's obviously time-consuming, it's nice in a lot of ways. Not just because I don't have to pay anyone, but because I sometimes come across weird clips that I can make a video out of, or can post on my Twitter page if I find interesting. And because John Fox was talking about Michael Strahan and his 2001 season, naturally, to fit the video, I wanted to find clips of Strahan getting sacks in 2001. So I found the footage that I could of plays where it said that Strahan got a sack. And obviously, most of them were legit and I didn't think twice about it. Heck, every play you're watching right now is a completely 100% legitimate sack, and no one would try and argue that. But one of the plays, as I was watching the footage to put into the video, caught my eye, because in no way whatsoever should it have been a sack. In reality, it was a stat-keeping error that could change NFL history that we need to talk about and dissect. And keep in mind, we have changed stats years after the fact before, no matter how significant they were. Stat corrections don't just come in the days or even the weeks after the game. They can come years after the fact. This man right here, Bobby Joe Conrad, had a streak of 94 consecutive games with a catch from 1961 to 68, and the record at the time was held by Green Bay Packers wideout Don Hudson, who had 95. However, in 1991, someone discovered that Don Hudson's consecutive game streak wasn't actually legit, and there was one game in that 95-game stretch where he didn't have a catch. Therefore, in 1968, Cardinals receiver Bobby Joe Conrad should have been honored with the longest streak in NFL history for games with a catch. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. The record for all-time wins by a head coach in NFL history at one point in time was held by this man right here, George Halas, Papa Bear. He had 325 wins. However, in September of 1993, 10 years after the man died, and half a century after one of the wins in question, Halas got one of his wins taken away from him, because as it turned out, he didn't coach that game. Instead, he was on naval duty serving in World War II. You get the idea. There are notable records that have changed years after the fact once we found out, either through some stat keeping error or some further information, that they weren't entirely accurate. And this one involving Michael Strahan might just be one of them. With that in mind, let's talk about the play in question, and one of Strahan's record-breaking 22.5 sacks. It comes from Week 8 of that 2001 season, with the New York Giants hosting the Dallas Cowboys at Giants Stadium. The situation is this. It's the opening drive of the game, and the Dallas Cowboys have the ball on New York's 44-yard line 4 minutes into the contest, looking to get themselves a first down and get into field goal range. Starting quarterback Clint Sterner takes the snap, and as he steps up in the pocket, thinking he's got a lane to run, Michael Strahan closes in on him and gets him at the line of scrimmage. It's no gain, it's a sack, which is number 13.5 for Strahan, and the Cowboys on 4th and 3 are forced to punt. Seems innocent enough, right? Strahan got a sack for this play, even though it was a gain of 0, and there's nothing unusual about that. Sacks for 0 yards happen all the time and are completely legit. However, should this have been a sack? Or was this not a sack at all, and instead was actually a gain of yardage? First, let's look at the NFL definition of what a sack is. And to do this, we're going to go straight to the source, as in the NFL Guide for Statisticians. On page 18 of the official guide to tracking defensive sacks, it says to credit a sack when one of 3 things happen. The second and third don't apply at all for this play because Sterner didn't step out of bounds and Sterner didn't lose the football. So we're just looking at item number 1. It says to credit a sack when the player making an apparent attempt to pass, in this case, Clint Sterner, is tackled or downed at or behind the statistical line of scrimmage. Credit a sack to the defensive player who tackled or downed the potential passer. Seems simple enough, right? If a quarterback gets tackled at or behind the line of scrimmage on a passing play, it's a sack. But was Sterner tackled at the line of scrimmage? We know he wasn't tackled behind the line of scrimmage, but was he tackled at the line of scrimmage? When you watch the footage, no, he was not. When you watch the footage, Sterner actually gains yards. There is nothing in the rulebook that says that a sack is credited to a player if the quarterback, without losing the football, actually gains yardage on the play. And when you watch this play again, you'll see that this should not have been a sack, but instead should have been a gain of 1 yard. There are 2 still frames to dissect here, where the ball was snapped and where Sterner's knee came down. As you see by this shot, the ball was snapped at the 44-yard line, and the Cowboys need to get to the 41-yard line to get the first. Now, let's go to still frame 2, the exact moment where Sterner's knee hits the ground. And I went frame by frame to find the exact moment where this happened. It happened right here. In the NFL, we spot the football based on where the furthest part of the ball is. And in that case, that's right here. I'm going to zoom in and circle the football, indicating that with the red circle, just so you have an idea of where Sterner is and how he's holding on to the ball. It sure looks like, from the eye test, that the frontmost part of the football is at the 43-yard line, or close to it at least, as in 1 whole yard ahead of the line of scrimmage. And if you're having trouble seeing this, don't worry, I'm not done yet. The giant line across the screen at the 41-yard line is the first down line. It's unofficial, it's for TV purposes, but it gives us a pretty good idea of where a ball carrier has to go in order to get the requisite yardage needed to move the chains. I decided to create my own line that's the exact same width, and superimpose it over the 41-yard line. I think we can all agree that this is the exact same width as the first down line, just to give you an inexact measurement of what we're looking at here. Now if I move that line over at the same exact width to the front of the football, which is where it's measured, and go straight across, we see that Sterner is about an inch shy of the 43. If he needs to get to the 43-yard line to get a first down, he'd be short, but it's not even an inch. He's right there. He clearly snapped the ball at the 44, and by the end of the play, he is significantly closer to the 43 than he is to the 44. And per the NFL rulebook, that means that this should be ruled at the 43 and not the 44. Per the NFL's official guide for statisticians, it says, if any point of the football rests on or above any yard stripe, future action is to be computed from that yard line. However, if all of the football has been advanced beyond any yard stripe, future action is computed from the first yard line in advance of the football. What this means in layman's terms is that when this play happens, because the ball is snapped at the 44, we count the play from the 44. However, so long as no part of the football is at the 44-yard line by the time the play is done, we count it as a gain and count it as being at the 43. Which raises the question, is any part of this ball when Sterner's knee goes down at the 44-yard line, any part at all? Not a chance in the world. I'm going to use the thinnest line possible just to illustrate this. The back end of the football is clearly past the 44-yard line. Let's circle the 44-yard line just to make sure, and yeah, that line is not even close. The entire football is past the 44. Therefore, by the NFL's own official rulebook and guide for statisticians, the play should be marked as a gain of 1 at the 43-yard line. You can't gain a sack on a play that gains yards, and by all accounts and by every definition that we have, that's a gain of a yard. Therefore, it is not a sack. And just in case it wasn't clear that this play actually gains some yardage, let's look at the official on the line of scrimmage. Look at the judge. He literally walks forward. He starts at the 44-yard line and then moves up to spot the ball. Even the official in question is saying by his movement, yep, Sterner gained yardage here compared to where we started. And since we already established that so long as the entire football is past the 44-yard line, that it counts as a gain of something, and we prove that the entire ball is past the 44, and by a fairly comfortable margin I might add, there is no universe in which this should be a sack. This sack should be taken off the board, and Michael Strahan's overall total for that 2001 season should be 21.5 sacks, not 22.5 sacks. What does this change in the grand scheme of things? A ton. A crap ton. Now, in terms of the unofficial sack record, remember that sacks were not an official stat until the 1982 season for some reason. Unofficially, Al Baker of the Detroit Lions, who absolutely should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, owns the record, as he had 23 sacks in 1978. But in the official era, the record should belong to T.J. Watt of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and only T.J. Watt, who had 22.5 sacks in 2021. Watt and Strahan are currently tied for first place, but in actuality, Watt should have sole possession, and Strahan should drop all the way down to 5th place, behind the 22 sack seasons of Minnesota Vikings defensive end Jared Allen in 2011, New York Jets defensive end Mark Gastineau in 1984, and Kansas City Chiefs linebacker Justin Houston in 2014. And trust me, I have no agenda here to give Watt the record and take it away from Strahan. Believe me, I grew up in New York, and I'm a Jaguars fan. We're born to hate the Steelers. The terrible towel gives me nightmares. You give me a terrible towel, and it's in my Jaguar blood to step on it. I want to make it extremely clear. Helping out the Steelers and giving Watt sole possession of first place was not at all what I had in mind, and was not at all what I set out to do when making a video on Julius Peppers from the 2007 season. But after I saw this play, I had to do it in the interest of fairness and NFL history. Because by every rule in the book and every definition, Strahan should not have the record. And it's not to take anything away from Michael Strahan. He is still a Hall of Famer. He is still one of the greatest defensive ends to ever do it. And it's one of the craziest crimes in Hall of Fame history that he did not get inducted on the first ballot and actually had to wait his turn to get in. But when people talk about that 2001 season and they put an asterisk next to a sack number, most people talk about from the standpoint of that Week 17 sack with Brett Favre. No one brings this play up. This play has been forgotten about more than 2 decades later, and is just another one of Strahan's sacks that we've all come to accept. But in actuality, it's not. This sack should be a gain of 1, and maybe the biggest gain of 1 of all time, considering what it means for the record books. Because when it comes to Michael Strahan's vaunted sack record, He might have just gotten sacked from the top. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.